because this is.
All right, and we're back. It's COMP125, and it's week 3, part 2 of our broadcast. This will be the final broadcast officially. I may have an addendum to add to this later on. So we went pretty fast there, right? We added in a nav bar with Bootstrap, and we used the nav bar inverse. Nav bar inverse in Bootstrap tells us that we're going to have a black nav bar. That's the style, the theme. Container fluid, what's container fluid? In Bootstrap, it means that there's not going to be any margin on the outside of our page. So if you look back at our page here, right, for Bootstrap, not this one, you can see that there's no margin on the left-hand side of our nav bar. Whereas here, where it says lesson 3 arrays and control flow, you can see that there is a margin. That margin comes from the container class, and it's down here. See this container class? It gives me a margin, right? On the left-hand side, a little bit of margin for my layout. Okay, this is where stuff is going to go. All right, so here's my paragraph, and I want some paragraph text to go in there, and I want to pop it in there with JavaScript. Now, we're still going to latch onto this first paragraph over and over again, but guess what's going to happen? We're going to have our paragraph on different pages. Our first paragraph is going to be put up on different pages, and I want my paragraphs to be called something else. Right, so like first paragraph, page 1, or first paragraph 1, or paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, let's say. We'll call this paragraph 1. So say paragraph 1. And then when I copy this page, which I'm going to do now, right, so don't be afraid when I do this kind of stuff, eh? Don't run away. It's not something to cry over, right? I'm just telling you right now, when I do this kind of stuff, and I'm sorry to be facetious, but take a look at this index.html. I'm going to copy this thing. Right, I'm going to paste it a couple of times here in Visual Studio Code. So now I have three HTML files: index, index 1, and index 2. I'm going to rename index 1 to rename this page. This is going to be called projects.html. And this one, index 2, we're going to rename to about.html. So 3 pages. Here's our index.html here. And we're going to change. Huh?
It has to be the exact same page for your index 1, right?
It has to be the same thing I put in my nav bar, yeah. Right? Otherwise, it won't link properly. All right, so now these 3 links are the exact same things that I put in here in my nav bar section, right? That's what this nav bar section links to: index, projects, and about, right? Index, projects, and about. I made these 3 pages, right? I want to change my index title. So instead of COMP123 lesson 3, we're just going to call this home for now. And in our about, we'll change this to about me, maybe. And then in my projects, I'm going to change this to projects. Let's make a few more changes, right? So in my about, inside my area down here where it says H1, lesson 3 arrays and control flow, let's change this to about me, right? And let's change my projects all the way down here so it says something like projects. So although they look the same, I can go to 3 different pages. Also, a couple things I want to do to prep for all this. I want to make projects my paragraph 2. Let's change this to paragraph 2. And let's make my about paragraph 3. There we go. So I've got paragraph 1 on my home page, paragraph 2 on my projects page, and paragraph 3 on my about page. 3 paragraphs. Okay. Now here's the dilemma. If I write code in my, so I gotta save everything, in my script, in my app.js, here's my app.js. If I write code and I use document.getElementById, and if I try and find something that doesn't exist, I'm gonna get an error, right? I'm gonna get an error. I'll show you what I talk about here. Let's try this out. If I say if, or if I say var, paragraph 1, type this out with me. Paragraph 1 is equal to document.getElementById, and if I link to it with something like paragraph 1, it's going to work in my home page, but it's going to fail in the other pages. Let's check this out and see if it works. So here's my paragraph 1, right? So one JavaScript page, 3 different pages, right? Let's see how that works. So go back here, and I'm going to refresh my page. Here's my home page. Oh, I forgot to make a couple more changes. Wait. In my About page, inside my navigation, my active link is going to move to my About. So I'm just going to cut this piece, right? I'm going to move this to my About page, or my About list item here. Why? Because that's going to be the link that's active, right? Save. And the same thing goes with my projects. In my projects, I'm going to move my active link from my home. I'm going to put that in my projects, like this up here. There we go. Now I've got everything going. Let's go back to my index.html and refresh. Notice that this says less than 3. And then my title bar, right? My title bar says home up here, right? If I click projects, my title bar says projects. I get projects, and also my active link moves to projects, right? If I click about, my title says about me, right? It says about me here, and my active link moves to my about me. So I've got a kind of a full site going on, right? Where I've got 3 pages. It went too fast, right? You're looking at me going, yeah, I went too fast. It's okay, because it's all recorded on video, thank God, right? And this is the thing that happens. I only have 1 day to do 2 days worth of work, right? So what I want to do now is I want to look at the errors, right? Now take a look at my home page. On my home page, if I right-click and go inspect, you can see that in my console, I got no errors. But what about in my projects? Well, so far, if I refresh, no errors. If I go to my About Me page, no errors, right? No errors. Okay, cool. So why? Because if I look at my my sources, and if I look at my scripts, and if you see that I have my app.js, you can see that I have a var paragraph 1 that's been defined, and I got document.getElementById paragraph 1, right? Now, here's the thing that I want you to note. There is no paragraph 1 for projects, right? For projects, if I look at my index.html under sources, right? If I want to see my index.html, so here's my elements, you can see that under my index.html in my body tag, that I do not have an ID of paragraph 1. I only have one that has paragraph 2. So there is no paragraph 1. Therefore, my paragraph 1 is undefined. There's nothing that exists there. So if I try and do something with paragraph 1, FYI, it'll fail, right? Because it doesn't exist for one or the other. So here's what we're going to do, right? Watch this. To make it work, I'm going to go back into my code, and inside my About page, or inside my app.js page, which is right here, I'm going to do one of these, right? Let's make all of our pages exist. So if I'll still do something like this. So var paragraph 2, right, is equal to what? Document.getElementById, let's copy this whole thing. And we'll say paragraph 2, right? Make them all, right? And, oops, paragraph 2. And we'll do the same thing with paragraph 3. Why not? Paragraph 3. And we'll take this thing here, put it there. There, good. Saved. And let's go back here and refresh. And console shows still no errors in home or anywhere else. Why? Because I haven't done anything with these things. These 3 paragraphs, they don't mean anything anyway right now. All right, so here's what I want to do. I want to test them. So how do I test if they exist? Well, here's what you can do. If paragraph 1, let's try this out. Paragraph 1, if it exists, if we just go if paragraph 1, just like that, and I put some, curly braces here, I want to print out a console log, console.log. Now it's something like paragraph 1 exists. Paragraph 1 exists. Okay, there we go. So if I have paragraph 1 exists. Okay, let's see if it works. So let's see if it works in all of our files. So I'll save, go back here, my home page, refresh, paragraph 1 exists. Yay. How about projects? No, it doesn't. Take a look. How about me? No, it doesn't. How about this one, home? Yes, it does. So effectively, I can check to see if a variable has been defined, right, by using the if statement. My friends, this is the key to using it in multiple pages. So everything that I'm going to do in my first page will be right in here, and underneath this if statement, right? Everything I do in my second page, right, will be underneath this with this if statement. This is just one way of doing it, by the way. There's other ways. If I want to do everything in my paragraph 3, if I check my paragraph 3, I know that it'll all be for my third page. I could also call this first page, second page, third page, whatever I want to do it. And I'm going to put some comments to that effect. So check to see if paragraph 1 exists. The reason why I'm saying if it exists means if I get an undefined, because there's no paragraph 1 ID, nothing in the page, the paragraph 1 ID, then in that particular page, it will not exist. It'll be undefined. And if it's undefined, I can't do anything with it, which means I don't want to program with it, because if I do, it'll cause errors, right? So to be safe, everything that I want to do for page 1 is in here, page 2, page 3. That's the way to do it. Let's check this out to make sure, right? This is the first step before we do anything with arrays. And we'll say paragraph 2 here. And this will be paragraph 3. Oops, if I can actually type. And now that I saved this file, paragraph 1, 2, 3, right? And if I go here and refresh the pages, so here you see paragraph 1 exists. Click projects, paragraph 2 exists. Click about me, paragraph 3 exists. And to test this out, if I had more than one paragraph in the page, index.html, let's say I added another one of these, but paragraph 2 existed too for some reason. Here's paragraph 2. Let's just make that in just to show you what I'm talking about. I've saved it. And if I refresh the page, if I go to home page, notice I get paragraph 1 and paragraph 2 because they both exist, right? If they don't exist, if an element that you're linking into, that you're hooking into, by the way, this will be on your test. If you're hooking into an element that doesn't exist, you may get an error. It also may fail silently, just letting you know. Failing silently is one of JavaScript's biggest problems because JavaScript by itself will not tell you there's an error unless explicitly told to show you, right? Or if you try and do something with my paragraph 1 when it doesn't exist, like assign its my inner HTML value, which is what I'm going to be doing, right? I can't assign a property of something that does not exist. It'll error out. It'll stop your application from working properly. And that's why we do this check first. By the way, this is part of flow control. We're using if statements, right, in my app.js to control each page's content, all right? We've tested it out with our little console command. All right, arrays. I want you to think about, and this is the crash course, the 5-minute crash course on what an array is in JavaScript, okay? By the way, I also have some supporting documentation up on eCentennial, right, that shows you a whole PowerPoint presentation on arrays, right, and control flow. I invite you to look at that. Please read that, right, so you can understand that. It will be on your next test. So next test on next Wednesday, we will be talking about arrays. I also will be talking about that on Monday when we get together, all right? So it's not the last time you're going to see it. But it's here. If you look at your building arrays in control flow, it talks about what these things are and how to use things like while statements, which you should already know how to use, if statements, if else, do while, and for. All these things, as well as switch. All these things, as well as data in arrays, should be covered. And in arrays, if you look at the PowerPoint, it looks like this. It has some array data that's stored in different cells of the array or elements. Each array element stores a different piece of data. In other languages, you have to store the same data type in the array. Not so in JavaScript. In JavaScript, you can store integer, string, anything you want, which is a pain in the ass for developers because developers don't like that. They want each array to store one data type. Now you can still do that. We can just emulate that so that you don't store. It's not good practice to store different things in the array, right? But it gives us a degree of flexibility, right, as well. For now, all we're going to store is strings in the array. How do we declare arrays in JavaScript? We say this, var name. This is one of the easiest syntaxes. This is the same syntax that assigns values. But if I need to create an empty array first. To do that, I'm going to do this. In JavaScript, my array is going to be called the paragraphs. See, paragraphs, plural, paragraphs array, right? And where do I do that? I'm going to do that after I declare my paragraph elements. So I'm going to say var paragraphs is my paragraphs array, right? Now, there's nothing special you have to do here. All you have to do is do something like this, is equal to square brackets, right? This defines my paragraphs array as an empty array. I don't have to tell JavaScript how big my array is because my arrays in JavaScript are also lists, which means I can add to them just like I would in other languages. I could click the push to push something onto the array, as well as pop to pop something off the array, as well as slice. There's different array methods that are built in that we'll be talking about over the length of this course. So this is define your paragraphs array. Okay, this is what we do here, my paragraphs array. So instead of saying paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3, I have a paragraphs array. This is one way. There's also a second way to define an array, which I prefer. It looks like, so second way, define an array, which should be something like this: var paragraphs. Let me just comment this out so it doesn't give me an error. Var paragraphs is equal to a new array. Also valid. Both are valid. This up here is the most common way to do it. Yes. Which one? These three things? We can, yeah. But for now, we're going to do it the other way around. We're going to use these things as output, right? We're not going to use them as input. Input, you're just going to type for now, right? So how am I going to make this array stuff happen? So let's use the first way, and we'll comment this out so you can see both ways, and then I'll update everything on GitHub. I've got my array. Notice when I hover over here, it says a paragraphs array of type any. It says type any because I haven't assigned anything in there. If I, for example, do something like this, you can actually assign stuff like Tom, I did this before, Mark, and Mary, right, as an example. And if I hover over my paragraphs now, it says it's a paragraph array of strings. Because if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a duck. Right? For JavaScript, it looks at it and says, what are you giving me? They're all strings? That's good. But what if I do something like this? You know, 1, and this will be something like something else, like you know, 1.5783, and maybe make another one over here, Boolean, like a true. There we go. Right? How about that? What does it do now? It says, well, my paragraph is of type string, number, and Boolean array. It's one of those, a string or a number or a Boolean, doesn't care. Bad, all right? Please don't do this. This is bad form for JavaScript. Keep it to 1. We have lots of variables we can use for our arrays, okay? We don't have to make everything in 1. You can do this, but you shouldn't, all right? You should try and do everything in 1. So you can initialize them in the same step as you define them. I rather do not. I like to initialize first and then define afterwards. And for our example, it'll work great. So I want to load up these arrays. How do I do that? I can do it like this. So I can say something like this, paragraph. Remember, there's zero-based counting for arrays. Paragraph 0 is equal to, this is my first paragraph. It is only visible on the first page. I'm going to keep typing, by the way. Don't worry about this. I'm not going to wrap and press semicolon, okay? And I'll do the same thing, but I'll say it's my second paragraph, it's only visible on the second page, and so on. And now, with this, you have enough information. Let's change the index. These are the indexes. Each of the indices, right, they point to different elements in my array. Now, because I've added 3 elements to my array, my 0th element, my first element, and my second element, right? My array now has a length of 3. Didn't have it before. There was no length. When I first defined my array up here, this array is of 0 length. But because I've added these 3 elements, now my array is of array length of 3. That's how fast it is, JavaScript, right? So this is my second. We'll change this stuff. My second, this is my third, right? And it is only visible on the first page. It's only visible on the second page. And this is only visible on the third page. Let's make it really clear for you guys. Right? Little paragraph, not really paragraph, more like sentences, right? That's one. And notice that I got to change my index to HTML, so I take that other one out because I don't want to show this one. Only one paragraph in my index.html. Okay, cool. So I've got my data. So here's all the data. Data for my pages, right? But now I'm going to use these if statements to check to see if my paragraph 1 exists, and then use my text content property to assign my paragraph 0, paragraph 1, and paragraph 2. How do I do that? Let's get I don't need these anymore. These are just debugging steps that I can take out, right? I can do something like this. I can say paragraph 1 dot text content, right, is equal to paragraph 0, because paragraph 0 is the first or the 0th element of my array, right? And I can do the same thing for paragraph 2 and paragraph 3. By changing these elements here, I can have 3 pages that use the same array. Here's your lab, right? The same one array with 3 elements, and I'm just dropping in. I'm using the text content property to inject content into my paragraphs for page 0, 1, and 2. Okay, let's check this out and see if it works, and I'll put it up on GitHub so you can see the result. So if I go back to my page, and if I refresh, oh, what happened? It says, uncaught reference error, paragraph is not defined. I made a mistake, is what I did. So it says paragraph. That's okay, I could have changed it to paragraphs. This is a typo. Save and refresh. Cool, there it is. This is my first paragraph, right? And if you look at it, if I go to this projects, there's my second paragraph, only available on the second page. And this is my about page. Uh-oh. What happened to my about page? Let's go reveal what's going on here. And to see what's going on, and you can see the uncaught reference error, paragraph 3. I didn't type it right. But that's where it is, right? Paragraph 3 is paragraph 3. There is no paragraph 3. That's why it gives you an error, right? That text content paragraph 2, right? Okay, challenge for you guys. I'm using paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3. Could I not use an array of HTML elements, right? And the answer is yes, I could. So how do I do that? Well, up here, before I use my paragraph 1, 2, and 3, I could do something like this. Now, I don't want to confuse the crap out of you too much more, but this is what I could do. This is why people love and hate JavaScript. Paragraph elements, we'll call it paragraph elements, right, will be the array, right? And then what I'll do is this. I'll say paragraph elements, and I'll copy right click here, right? And I'll rename the symbol into paragraph elements 0. Right? Let's see, paragraph elements 0, right? Now notice how it gives me a bit of an error. It says JS is expected. It equals paragraphs elements 0. I don't have to do this anymore, right? Because I've already defined paragraphs elements. Do the same thing for 2. So rename symbol, and I'll type that in. Paragraph elements 1, right? Paragraph elements 1. Get rid of the var because I don't want to type a variable, and then reformat, rename, right? You guys are going to die, right? And then type it there. All right, now that's a little crazy, right? But that's using an array for the paragraph elements. And if you hover over this, it says it's an array of any. But if I hover over this, it says it's still an array of any, right? But remember, I can always do an array. I can define this array, each of these arrays, just to do it a little differently for you guys to really confuse you. Now, again, it's all recorded, so you're all good, right? So when you follow this, you understand. Now I'm refactoring, right? If I take this piece, I could do something like this. I can copy this and put it in here, right? And then do one of those, sorry, to make it crazy, right? I could break it down over a couple of lines and do one of these, right? So this is the second paragraph. And this is the third paragraph. Because I don't have to do it in line like this. I can do it like this. I'm separated, right? So it looks nice, right? There's 1, 2, 3, right? All I'm doing is getting the reference. These are getting references for each of the elements, and I'm storing it in my paragraph elements. And if I do that, take a look. It says that paragraph elements is an array of HTML element type, right? So that's the kind of array it is. Whatever I assign it, it's that element, all right? So you could do something like this if you wanted to cut it all down. For now, because we don't want to confuse you too much, we're just going to undo that change, right? Because we don't need to do that. Okay? So there's 2 arrays that I'm using. One of them, this is an array, define an array of HTML elements. This is what this is for, right? That I'm going to assign my first element, or my 0th element, my first element, my second element, to whatever I'm going to get from my document.getElementById, right? When I use getElement, I'm getting the element. I'm actually getting a reference to the element on the page, right? Let's test it. I made these changes. Let's test it to see that I'm actually getting the same information, because I kind of did a funky rename, and that always might work when I do a replace, right? So let's check it, because paragraph element 0, text content, the text content property of paragraph elements 0, the 0th element, right? And by the way, paragraphs elements is just an array location of 0. All right? So again, it becomes a little bit complex, but you can see that paragraph 0 and paragraph 0, paragraph 1 and paragraph 1, paragraph 2 and paragraph 2. Oh my God, I can refactor this into a for loop. I know you guys are going to kill me. You're going to kill me, right? But you can do that, right? I can do something like this. Now follow me here when I do this crazy, insane stuff. So for, and I'm going to, just what I want to do is I want to create a for loop really quickly. And remember what a for loop looks like almost in every language. I'll use index. That's index, right? So for index 0, so such a 0, where index is less than, well, we know which array length am I checking? It's probably going to be this, right? No, paragraph elements. So paragraph elements dot length. So paragraph elements dot length, right? As long as it's less than paragraph elements dot length, then increment my index, okay? And what I want to do here, instead of doing this, right, is I want to grab one of these lines of code, right, and pop it into here. And so what this does is exactly what I did before, but instead of using the 0, I use index. And this, my friends, will take the place of all of this. Okay, so one little for loop to go through everything. It'll check to see if the paragraph exists. If it doesn't, it'll skip over this next line, right? If it does, it'll take paragraph element 0 and inject paragraph context into it, right? That's what it'll do. Okay? Let's test it and see if it works or if I'm crazy, right? Refresh. 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 Right? So you can see that each of these works, right? And I use a simple for loop to cycle through each of the paragraph elements by using an index that's similar to each one of them. To prove this, because you guys might think I'm nuts and you think that this paragraph is wrong, let's add some other stuff in here. So it is only visible on the first page. This next sentence is to prove that this really works. There we go. Save, go back, refresh. You can see that this is different than this one and this one or this one. It's all the same, right? So this is how you inject. So what I've taught you here is the ability for you to inject content into the page by getElementById. And I want to refresh your mind about what arrays would look like, what's the syntax for JavaScript. The only difference between what you've seen in C# and Java is the fact that you can define an array like this with 2 square brackets. This is an empty array. Or you can initialize it inline, like I've shown you, by putting it inside these square brackets. You can put in different values right away. That's initialization, right? Or you can use the other way of defining an array, the second way, which is new array. If I was going to define a new array, that's the other way. So there's 2 ways generally to define arrays. one of them is like this, and one of them is like this. There's a third way, but we have to wait till we get to more advanced ways of doing this thing. Now remember that arrays in JavaScript, as a reiteration, is they're also lists, which means I can push. I have other things I can do with arrays. An example of this before you guys go is this. If I was doing a type sum an array, one of these two arrays, paragraphs is an example, right? Here's my paragraphs array. And I press dot. IntelliSense tells me I have all these additional things I can do with it. These are all built-in methods that are part of the array, like array length. Length is a method that calculates, or property actually, that calculates the length of my array. But so too is pop and push. And if I hover over these things, right now they don't give you anything, but what it does is if I want to push another element onto the array, I could do so. I could, just like I would with a list. All right, so we'll talk about different array methods when we get back next week. Any questions around what we did today? I know I went really fast, and you guys all have a million questions. It's okay. Hold your questions. Do your lab. Try and do your lab too, right, with your own paragraph data, right? Yes. This is what I want for lab 2. So if you finish this thing off, you can use my code and modify my code with your own paragraph, and you're good to go. I want you to be able to deal with it. The lab is not about you figuring it on your own, but rather you using Bootstrap, we've done here, right? We've done the array and injecting code with different kinds of arrays with the for loop, right? Which I've kind of done. Sorry? I want this whole folder, yeah, this whole content, this lesson, COMP125 lesson 3 is what we. Yes, and then also your link to GitHub and Azure, which we didn't do that piece. I didn't have time. Right? Any questions around what's due for Friday? Friday, your lab 2 is due. It's all around this stuff here. You're free to use what I've shown you. Please make it your own, which means make the pages look like your own. Give your own paragraph data. Put some simple paragraph information of your own in there. Don't just use the stuff I typed, or else you get 0. All right?
For the assignment, can we do like any calculus and we can take
Give me a second. Let me finish this off, and then you can ask me questions. Okay, guys. See you next week for JavaScript.